Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and this is Movie Crap. This is my weekly movie news show where I sort of talk about what I want to talk about when it comes to movies. And today I sort of wanted to talk about the future of streaming movies specifically and how they're being perceived currently. And I think there was an interview with Spielberg who every time he's kind of does a big interview, he says something about how he feels the future of the current state of film will be. And before he had said something that, the superhero genre will eventually, fall off just like the Western did. That's not like to say he thinks the superhero genre is bad or anything. That's actually a pretty correct. Like, most genres don't stay at the top forever. Eventually, yes, he's not anti-superhero movie, certainly. It's more that just he understands film history. And most of the time, I do agree with his statements on that. I'm not like, I think they get misconstrued as like old man Spielberg wants to, criticize the young folks and things. And I really don't agree with that for the most part. They're usually pretty well educated, well thought out from a guy who really understands film history. But when he said the thing about streaming this week, I was a little surprised, especially when he said the thing in his interview. He's quoted as saying that he feels like if films on Netflix that do a 1 week theatrical window thing to get Oscar nominations shouldn't be nominated for Oscars. They should be nominated for Emmys, because you should be making films. Theatrical films that get nominated for Oscars should be made for the big screen, which is certainly how Spielberg feels about cinema. Anytime I've seen any of his films theatrically, it's a far more intense, interesting, amazing experience than it is on home video or watching it at home. And with The Post, actually, recently, I saw that in theaters, and I loved that film, and it felt like thrilling, and I could notice when the camera was moving as much as it did, and all these things with it. And then when I saw it at home, it felt like the experience was actually kind of lessened. It felt like it was made more for the big screen, and that's certainly how he's felt about cinema through his whole career. But I don't necessarily think that that's the only way movies should be. Certainly movies have gone to direct to DVD, direct to streaming, direct to on demand, whatever, for a while now. It's just only recently that they've been like good enough or had enough of a promotional push behind them to actually get nominated for awards and be considered major films. And notice there's some pushback because people suddenly don't like this sort of like weird offshoot thing coming in there. Now, certainly mainstream Hollywood studios aren't really making the smaller films that get nominated for Oscars, so it's actually like pretty much why you can have all these rival studios do these things, because there is kind of a gaping hole for it. But also, I think this calls to mind the future of streaming in terms of doing a film that is made for a streaming company or acquired for a streaming company, and then just dumping it on Netflix and giving it that 1 week or couple weeks. I think Ocho was in theaters for a little bit, actually, not very many, but it was, and giving it a small theatrical release. Whereas what Amazon Prime has done, I think, is far more respectful of the theatrical process, particularly when a lot of theaters really sort of need money and, need support to keep going. And what Amazon Prime did with The Big Sick over the summer, I think, shows that you can have a film that is eventually going to go to streaming, and very publicly, obviously, it's an Amazon movie, and still be a big hit. I think with The Big Sick, which made about $43 million domestically, it didn't do as well overseas, but it did very well in America. It shows you can market a film that, like, most studios wouldn't really do The Big Sick. I know it was a big Sundance movie, and Fox Searchlight, I'm sure, probably could have done a pretty decent job, but it did better than a lot of those smaller films have done in a while. Not like Little Miss Sunshine, I believe, made a lot more than that, but it got kind of closer to that than most studios have done. And it kind of shows you that, obviously with streaming, it's more about getting unique visitors and getting people to come to your service. But I think what Amazon Prime did, which is interesting, is they made a film a hit and clearly made some money on it. I don't think they made a lot, because promotion for Oscar things and smaller movies is a lot, and I think it probably wasn't a huge profit center, but it shows you could make money off of these things and have kind of a different avenue to make revenue from, and then also promote your streaming service. Basically go like, hey, do you want to watch The Big Sick? Well, you have to go to Amazon Prime. Look at the films that we have that are hit films that your friends are talking about. Whereas Netflix is like, I don't know, we bought a bunch of this crap and we're just going to release it. Certainly they'll do ads on TV, the big Super Bowl thing with Cloverfield Paradox, but they're not really pushing films, and they're really kind of just shoving them out as just like constant stream of content. And it feels like, you know, the older generations that's used to this kind of like hurrah, kind of like big promotional campaign push has kind of a backlash towards how Netflix does it. But I also have to agree with that, because I think there's oftentimes I'll be like, oh, that came out on Netflix? Like, I've heard of a film through podcasts and through articles that went through the festival circuit that I am interested in, and I would see on Netflix that first weekend, and I don't know about it, because Netflix doesn't just care about that opening weekend. They care about how it plays throughout its time on Netflix. And it feels like, I think the main thing that has to change is, I think what Amazon Prime did is probably the smarter way to do it, because it's respectful of the theatrical experience, and it gets people into streaming and watching a film that is kind of going to live on streaming longer than it'll live in the theater, certainly. But it's also promoting your service, and there's kind of like a win-win-win in that respect. Now, all these companies, Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, which are the big three, and obviously there's going to be a lot more coming up very soon in 2019 with the Disney streaming service, and plenty more that are planned that are going to change the market, and the market's about to change quite drastically. But I think if the market is about to change, those people should realize that opening in theaters actually helps you, because it makes you want to talk about it. There's people like this channel and many other YouTube channels and sites that pretty much need to cover every film that opens wide in theaters. And the problem with on-demand and all those things is there's so many things, it's hard to keep up and really center on where to go, whereas you kind of follow the promotion money. You know, obviously I did Pacific Rim 2, 1, because demographically it works out and stuff. I'm interested in it too. And 3, also it's like the big movie that weekend, so everyone's going to talk about it. So there's a certain like thing to go to, whereas with streaming it's like, I don't know, here's a bunch of crap, doesn't seem to really work as well. And I certainly know Netflix and their profile has gone down quite a bit because of, you know, Cloverfield Paradox and that animated Godzilla movie I watched, and I think there was something else. I forget all the streaming movies I watched through there, but it does feel like they'll sort of buy anything. Or, Full Metal Alchemist, sorry. It does feel like they'll certainly buy anything because they know you'll watch it and they don't really care about the quality. And I think things like that are giving streaming sort of a bad name right now. What needs to be done is I don't think Amazon Prime is certainly one people use as much or care about as much, but business plan wise, I think they're probably doing the best job, because they're making you want to go to that theater, they're making you excited and talk about their movies, and they're finding different ways to sell their movies rather than just on their streaming service. And I think that's the one way to get people in that no one's really thinking about, because when the dust settles during all this streaming stuff, which it probably will in the next 3 or 4 years, I think we'll see that that is probably the best way to do it, is almost use the theater experience as almost like a promotional event sort of thing. But they're not really doing that. They're just doing it for awards consideration, and they need to think more about that. And the awards consideration release doesn't really work anyway, profit-wise. It's like, it really needs, that whole business model needs to be rethought, and everyone's been saying that for a little bit, because like, no, it's just like a ton of movies at once, and like very few of them end up making money and making the big rewards and making money because they won or are nominated for awards anymore. Doing that doesn't really make sense. What they need to do is think of a way to get these movies to make money outside of and before they come to streaming, and then instead of, you know, being on demand or something, they come to that streaming service, and that's where you watch them. And by that point, people are like, hey, I see all those other things that came out around the time are on demand or on Netflix. Oh, this is on Amazon Prime. Oh, I'll go watch that. I have that anyway because of the shipping thing, all that shit. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how this progresses. But I think one of the things that streaming services need to do is sort of respect the theatrical experience while also understanding they're like doing something different, and understanding what films like maybe don't need to be released in theaters, what films that maybe if they want to be taken more seriously and fight the Academy who refuses to nominate them just because they're Netflix, maybe do what Amazon Prime did with the big site. Because that, to me, I think that should have been a bigger deal. People should have been saying like, hey, here's a streaming movie, it wasn't made for streaming, it was acquired at Sundance, and it made a ton of money in theaters, especially for the movie it was. Like, that just doesn't really happen anymore. And the fact that they were able to go through that and make a hit film for their streaming service promoting Amazon Prime, that they have this movie, I think shows a great business model that's coming up. And I know Disney's planning things like Lady and the Tramp and stuff, but it also, I know Disney's planning to do a Lady and the Tramp live action film, go right to their streaming service, and bigger films, but I think it shows there's an avenue for these smaller films that studios have sort of forgotten about. Certainly recently we had something like Love, Simon, which was the first kind of like gay teen romantic comedy or coming out comedy. I didn't see it, but it actually made money, and I think there is a safe place actually for these artistically different and mid-budget films, and that's through streaming. And understanding how to market them effectively is something that people are going to have to rethink. And I think what Spielberg ultimately maybe is saying is they need to respect the theatrical experience, and I think that's something that cinema will probably always be attached to for a while. I think it is a little weird sometimes because things get released and formats are the format of a film or a TV show, and we can probably break away from that, but that's probably an entirely separate video. I think what ultimately will happen is they need to understand how to work with them instead of breaking away from them, because I don't think that has worked as well for Netflix as they would have liked. I think Mudbound could have been a much bigger movie had they actually marketed it effectively and really pushed it and made it kind of appointment viewing, which they didn't. They did that with Bright. They unfortunately did it with Cloverfield Paradox. They've done it for a few movies, but they really need to look at what happened with The Big Sick, because people talked about it. My parents talked to me about it. Like, everyone knew about that movie, and Mudbound seemed to sort of like slide in there, kind of, you know, come up because of its acclaim, but you need more to that. There's more to selling and marketing a film other than like just releasing it and hoping people check it out. I think there is a future with streaming. It's just you have to sit there and think, we need to respect the theatrical window and do something with it, rather than saying we're sick of it, because the reason people want to watch movies and want to experience films is mostly because of the awesome times they had in the theater, and the appointment and the experience of that really is what made movies what they are. And as of right now, while we still have theaters and all that stuff, we need to respect that window and understand how to use it. And if we are using it to help that studio in promoting the entire brand, maybe it's good to do that. Disney already does that with their crappy live action films. Why don't we actually do it for better reasons? And if you promote this whole company, maybe people will watch these interesting different documentaries. Maybe people will watch these weirder, odder foreign films that Amazon Prime and Netflix and Hulu are buying. It can actually promote the whole medium and spread more film knowledge and people watching different kinds of films, rather than just kind of dumping out a thing because you're like, I don't know, we bought it, what am I supposed to do with it, is a model that's not really going to hold up anymore. So I think what Spielberg honestly maybe is talking about is we need to understand how to get the theater to work for us, rather than just forgetting about it entirely, because certainly I think forgetting about it entirely is not going to work out as well in the long term as I think Netflix originally thought it was. All right, so that was Movie Crap. If you would like to talk about my thoughts on streaming and my little rant there, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And this is my new rebooted kind of version of Movie Crap, where I just kind of do an editorial on a certain topic every week. It's kind of a loose format right now. We're messing with it. These are actually edited by Sean Key, who's thankfully is very awesome to come aboard my channel and help me edit videos, just the Movie Crap videos, which is different for me, so I'm excited for that. And this will be a new weekly show. I hope you guys dig it. There's no way I could really do Movie Crap the way it used to be, just because of job changes and schedule changes and all that stuff. But I think this is kind of a cool way to do it and talk about kind of more pertinent, topical kind of issues, and still be able to do Movie Crap, which I know you all like. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks again for Sean Key for editing this. He did a really great job. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.